Hello and welcome back to Around the Horns. I'm Zach and I'm here with two very special guests today to talk Texas baseball. You might notice my normal co-host Aaron is not here. He's off to NOLA to celebrate and batch it up. So hopefully he makes it back safely. As mentioned, we do have two guests today. So we have senior editor and fantasy baseball fanatic Dustin McComas, and then lifetime Longhorn and scouting director Drew Bishop of Fivetool Baseball. Before we get into everything, please, what did I miss? Give us some stats on your Pittsburgh Pirates there, Dustin, and let us know about the umps right now.
The umpiring is an issue. My fantasy week didn't start well. I had Corey Kluber active in a couple of places, but then I had Reed Detmers on a few teams as well. So umpiring is an issue. Red Sox had multiple people ejected last night after a bad third strike call. The Pirates just took a series from the Dodgers. So that just gives credence to you can never predict baseball, which remains true because the Pirates are not very good. But other than that, everything's in full swing. High school, we're all over the place with high school baseball playoffs, and I watch as much MLB as I can. We keep up with the college games. So it's a great time of the year because every level of baseball is going right now.
Yeah. Y'all getting out to any games this weekend? I know Lake Travis kicks it off out at Dripping Springs High School against Johnson. There's some other big series kicking off today and tomorrow.
Yeah, for me, it's fortunate because there'll be a lot of home games for me with Westlake and Smithson Valley, Lake Travis and Johnson, Clark and Westwood. So it's one of the good times where I have my pick of games around here in the Central Texas area and don't have to leave home.
Yeah, same for me. Tonight I'm gonna go see Flower Mound Marcus versus JJ Pierce. One of my high school coaches JJ Pierce, and I've seen Marcus a few times, and I think they've got a chance to go pretty far this year. Obviously if they get past Pierce, but tomorrow I'm gonna go see 2024 Texas commit Matthew Millett against Heath. So that'll be a good one. And then Saturday is just going to depend upon what happens today and tomorrow. And I'll just kind of pick the best pitching matchup I can find probably and go from there. But yeah, we're excited to we're getting knee deep in the playoffs and high school baseball. And we've gotten to see a lot of the Texas commits and signees over the past couple of months, and future's bright. So yeah,
I'm especially excited to see Westlake and Smithson Valley because I live in Smithson Valley now. And then they obviously have the freshman playing who's committed to Texas. They have Caden Wells committed to A&M. He's been lights out. And then, Covert and Peterson have done really well for Westlake. So that'll be a fun series to watch home and away.
There'll be some runs scored in that series. Both those teams can swing it. It'll be fun for sure.
Yeah. So for the viewers that don't know, Dustin McComas was a longtime writer and covered the Longhorns for Orangebloods. And then Drew Bishop, for those who obviously apparently have been asleep for all their life, played for Texas baseball, is the Rockwall legend, and obviously was the director of recruiting operations or director of operations in general, I guess, for Texas baseball for a number of years. So really appreciate y'all being on. Y'all work for Fivetool now. Y'all cover Texas high school baseball, and I guess in general, I know y'all's podcasts are awesome because it gives a lot of kids and parents work to do and what to go look for as they're getting recruited or wanting to go to college. But tell us a little bit more about Fivetool before we get started.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, it's, I joined obviously in July. I left Orangebloods after being there since I started as an intern, the Texas baseball season in 2006. I mean, it's Kyle Russell time because I grew up playing with and against Kyle Russell. But Fivetool, it kind of gets a lot of publicity for putting on events and things like that and tournaments in the summer and stuff. But really, I think at the heart of Fivetool is its genesis is it wants to give guys an opportunity to stay in the game. Obviously, when we go watch games and things like that, we're attracted to the big names, the top prospects and stuff like that. But really, we get really excited about, those uncommitted seniors or those uncommitted juniors. And Lynn Van Laningham and Brooks Van Laningham do a fantastic job. And Lynn always brings this up, and I think it's a fantastic point that guys are good. If they're going to go play, they're going to stay within a certain radius of home, most likely. Baseball tends to be more of a regional thing. Like your guys that play high school baseball in Texas are often probably going to play college baseball in Texas or Oklahoma or Louisiana or somewhere pretty close by. So they kind of came up with the idea of, hey, let's just try to give these guys an opportunity to stay in the game, and go from there. But really, I got to give a shout out to Jeff Kahn and the social media team. Like, I think that's what really revolutionized Fivetool is, going at it the right way with the right people to keep kids in the game, but also the social media coverage that we do with the Twitter videos, the Instagram stuff, the Facebook stuff, the TikTok stuff. I mean, if you're a kid that plays in a Fivetool event and you hit a homer or pitch a great game, like, it's gonna be on the internet. And as Drew and I know, Drew knows better than I, these college coaches don't have a lot of time to go out and see kids because during the high school season, their season's going. During the summer, the recruiting calendar is basically smashed into a really short amount of time that they have to go out and see not just rising juniors, but sophomores, freshmen. They got to work on the portal. They got to work on JUCO. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I know it's a great resource for those guys when they see a guy that they're kind of interested in, or maybe they hear something like, hey, I'm just going to go on Twitter and search his name in Fivetool, and up pops a video of an event he played in. So, but really, it's just about giving kids an opportunity to stay in the game, because it's, the game's been really great to us. It's been really great to the Van Landingham. It's been really great to everybody that works for Fivetool. And also that social media aspect where we just try to give those kids as much coverage as we possibly can so they can get an opportunity to keep playing at the next level.
Yeah, I think, Dustin summed it up pretty good. The goals of Fivetool are to keep kids in the game, help get kids opportunity. And, luckily for us, there's some Longhorn flavor involved. We had an incredible intern program when I was at Texas. We just had all kinds of really good students that wanted to work for and be a part of Texas baseball. And, I always joked with a lot of them. It's like, man, I'm going to be working for some of these kids someday. And it turns out that ended up being true, because Brooks, whose dad runs it, and Brooks and him are, pretty much running the show. He was my first student worker ever. And then our second student worker ever was Jeff that Dustin mentioned. So we've had a bunch of really good kids come through the program at Texas and go on to do bigger and better things in the game of baseball. And Brooks was the one that started that pipeline. And then, baseball is about relationships more often than not. And, his dad just kind of saw a bad trend in the way that, we'll call it youth baseball, but anything below college, let's say, just kind of didn't like the way it was headed about 10 years ago now, and just kind of set out to put together some good events and keep kids playing on their teams and just provide opportunities for kids to stay in the game and go to that next level. And a lot of times, as Dustin and I have seen, there's just a lot of really good players in Texas, and a lot of those players just don't get the opportunity to be seen like everyone else does. Like a guy like the guys that we're about to talk about, guys like Jared Thomas, Jalen Flores, they don't need Fivetool, right? Those guys are going to be known across the board by everyone. It's the next tier of kids that we really have our niche with. They're the ones that, might need a little bit more help finding a place to play, or, coaches just haven't seen them, or maybe they've grown late. A lot of kids don't grow until after their junior year or in the fall of their senior year. And we get to see those guys at times that some of these college coaches don't. So that's been a really fun part of the job so far, just helping connect kids and coaches, and, we get eyes on them. And luckily, with Jeff's operation that he runs with the video and all that, we have so much content on these kids that we can pass along. And, if just help make a connection, if nothing else, because those guys, like Dustin said, the college coaches don't get out to see much during the spring, especially playing Tuesdays, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. More often than not, those are the days that the high schools are playing, minus Sunday, obviously. But it's been fun, and it's exciting too to get to see a lot of these kids that are heading to Texas and other programs in Texas as well. So we're starting to get more and more familiar with the younger kids as we go, and this summer will be kind of a springboard for us to help us do some of the some of the prospect stuff for the younger kids.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I know I really enjoyed listening to y'all's story about Bryce Elder and just how he was a super late bloomer and, blows up, ends up at Texas instead of going to one of the, junior colleges, et cetera. And it's awesome what y'all are able to do. So yeah, it's really cool follow along, listen to the podcast. If you're not following their podcast, please do so. They always have some really great information. Let's briefly talk about this past weekend in Morgantown. The Horns finally got that elusive series win on the road. When I first heard the stat from K-Rod, who's the SID at Texas, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, they've never won in Morgantown? Yeah. Like, surely that's not right. But yeah, that couldn't believe it. Hansen and Gordon, they really came through. I was a little worried because of that doubleheader, like South Carolina. I was having flashbacks to, oh my gosh, we're going to have just madness on the doubleheader. But those two guys were lights out. Gordon, man, he doesn't have the most plus stuff, right? But that dude has so much confidence that he goes out and just attacks. And it's been really fun to see him grow. And then obviously Melendez is must-watch TV. I know this is probably a little biased, but he's still my favorite for the Golden Spikes. That dude, he just swings and hits it so hard. It's ridiculous. So.
Yeah. Well, literally since we've started the podcast, Kendall tweeted out that his top 3 for the Golden Spikes, and he has Ivan at 2 behind Connor Herpy.
Yeah. That dude
he's putting up some big numbers too. But yeah, obviously, being a Texas homer, it's tough to deny what Ivan's done. I mean, it's been an incredible year. Not surprising to those who watch him work and do everything that he does to get better as a baseball player. And but man, it's still, even so, it's ridiculous. And you probably take it for granted watching it every day. But I think it's been interesting too. I think Dustin can probably echo this too, but some of the area scouts seem to be circling back around a little bit more. I think their bosses are seeing some of the numbers Ivan's putting up, and they're just starting to think, what are we missing here? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he finishes the season from a statistical standpoint, and then from the draft as well.
Yeah, I think the most impressive thing about him is he's gotten to conference play and it hasn't changed. I think that's what a lot of people from the scouting side were kind of looking at, like, because last year when he got hot. I mean, it was insane. And it was just kind of an up and down, which isn't that uncommon for any baseball level, but it was a very up and downness to what he was doing. And this year it's been more of that straight line, which you don't hardly get at this level. So I think people are kind of like, okay, when he gets in the conference play, what happens? I know in particular, a lot of scouts were kind of looking at that Oklahoma State series, knowing that they have a lot of stuff in that rotation. Like, okay, let's see what he looks like against some of the better stuff that he's going to see. And he more than held his own there as well. So yeah, like Drew said, I think, I think it's a weak draft class overall if you look nationally. And, you're looking at what he's done statistically and cutting down the strikeouts and things like that. I'm sure that people are kind of like, hey, like, might want to go back and get another look at this and let's see if we need to kind of raise this in the system or what's going on here. And but I've just been extremely impressed because it just hasn't dipped at all in conference play. And the book gets out on you see better pitching, that sort of thing, and he's kept it up. But yeah, I hope Texas fans don't take it for granted because it's an incredible offensive season. Like, as awesome as Cody's season was a few years ago, like statistically, you look at what Ivan's doing and it's like, whoa, like, because I know how good Cody was and like how much it was like when he got up in certain moments, you're like, he's barreling the ball. Like he's going to hammer this pitch somewhere. Yeah. And then Ivan's kind of even putting up better numbers. But you mentioned Lucas Gordon. I think that, Drew can probably speak to this better than me, but he's turned into what I think Texas thought he was going to be when he signed, like competitive, strike throwing, the fastball plays up, the changeup can play off of that. He's going to get on the mound. He's going to have that fire. He's going to go after people from the left side. And it's been good to see him step up because, when Tanner Witt went down, I mean, they needed somebody to really jump in that rotation and give them some innings. And then, with Tristan Stevens having his struggles as well, where would this team be without Lucas Gordon, especially what he's done in conference play? So it's been fun to watch him kind of step up and fill that role.
Yeah, and it's been interesting too because I'd never seen Gordon's fastball have late life, but I mean, I've seen him hit 94, 95 recently. And so, he's continued to put in that work with Coach Allen and he just continues to get better. It's been really fun to watch. And then, yeah, with Melendez, one of the things that I was looking for this year is how does he handle that off-speed breaking outside? Because last year that really started to eat him up late in the season after he had that hot streak. And, he's just not a guy that they can pitch around at this point because Murph has done so well behind him. Silas is, really hit for power this year. But Melendez has just continued to really hit the ball well. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been beating it over everyone's head. Like, please pay attention to this guy because you're not going to see Kyle Russell, Cody Clemens. You don't see them come around too often at Texas. So it's been a lot of fun. But as I mentioned, we have two special guests this week. It's an off week for the Horns. They got exams going on. Guys get a little break. Pierce even threw out that he's going to get some recruiting done tomorrow on Friday. So, good for him to get out there and find some new arms, new bats for the team. But I wanted to take this week to kind of dive into some of the Texas signees that Texas has potentially coming in. Obviously, not all of them are going to make the campus for, in the draft or whatever reason. But y'all have seen a lot of these guys in person or done a lot of research on them. So just wanted to go through them with you. I think, Drew, you had mentioned let's start with the catchers and then kind of work through the infield, outfield, and then hit the pitchers up last. Well, let's start off with one of my favorite guys to watch, who I think is going to be a big hit at Texas, is Rylan Galvin out of Sinton, coached by obviously lifetime Longhorn Adrian Alanis. He's a little overshadowed at times by Blake, the LSU commit, but man, that guy can hit, and it's pretty funny when you have a guy that is a really good catcher that doesn't get a lot of time there. So.
Yeah, we joke their catching situation's better than probably 99% of college programs in the country. Like it's incredible, and sometimes Ryland's back there catching Blake when he's up to 96 and just dominating guys. But I got a chance to see that. I got a chance to see Sent in a few games at Dripping Springs earlier this season, and I came away impressed with Ryland. Physically, he looks great. I mean, clearly he knows how to take care of his body and that sort of stuff. I'm a big believer in bat speed. Just in I think as a hitter, if you're going to move up levels, you're going to, if you have pro aspirations and that sort of thing, you don't see many big leaguers that don't have bat speed. And he's got it. He's got torque in the swing. He's got bat speed. He's got some juice from the right side. There's a little swing and miss in there, but I'm okay with that because he swings with intent. And when there's contact, it's really good contact. Catching, like Drew and I talk about this sometimes, it's the toughest position to evaluate because there are so few guys that can do it at a level that you're like, yes, you're going to be a pro catcher. Like you're going to be drafted as a catcher. You're going to go into pro ball as a catcher. You're probably going to make the big leagues as a catcher. And Blake Mitchell is that guy on Sinton, but I think Ryland, he's made some strides. He's got a big arm, really, really strong arm, which is going to help him control the run game and things like that. He moves well. He moves well enough to go play the infield when he doesn't catch. But I think as he continues to work at it, I think that skill will tick up a little bit. If you look at what Texas has got at the catching position next year, I think they're looking at him like, hey, come get all the innings you want, big boy. Like we need somebody to get in there and catch.
Yeah.
It was a good look at him earlier this season. Obviously, Sinton has been killing everybody. I mean, you can make a great case of the best team in the state. I think that he's probably going to make it to campus, and I got to think that he's going to be firmly in the mix to catch a lot of innings right away when he arrives.
I kind of had him penciled in as he's like the Silas replacement from a pure hitting standpoint. I mean, that'll really help with that drop off there. And then I think I've got a lot of faith that Miller and the team can, work with him to, get up to speed on his catching ability, because he may come in a little raw, but as you mentioned, he catches for Blake. He's seen some good power arms, so that helps him out a lot.
No doubt. Yeah, he's an athlete. His best baseball is in front of him, and he's got the stuff that you can't coach, right, or can't teach. So you're starting with an interesting ball of clay, who's athletic, who's played a lot of good baseball. Like you mentioned, he's caught good stuff, and that matters because I've seen a lot of guys come in there that they haven't caught that kind of stuff. And it's definitely an adjustment. So he'll have a leg up there. And he'll be able to handle some of the arms that we'll have on the roster.
Yeah. And then the other catcher I think they have coming in is Grant Farlander. He's a local kid out of St. Mike's. I've seen his bat. He looks like he has some potential there. Haven't seen too much of his catching, so I don't know if y'all have too much of a scouting report on him, but could be a guy that comes in for.
Yeah, I saw him in the fall. This was a guy that was a one-time Oregon commit that came out and got him early. And like you said, I think he's a bat first guy, but he's obviously talented. And whenever you can add that sort of ability into the mix with a guy that can give you some innings behind the plate, that's always a good thing. As Drew knows, you can never have too much catching depth at Texas, because we've seen what it looks like when you run out of that depth, and it's not a good situation for anybody involved.
You mean we've suffered through that?
Yeah, it would. Oh man, poor Cam Fields is still throwing sliders that they can't catch behind home plate. But get it. One-time Oregon commit, add him to the mix. I think the bat's got a chance to play at the next level. But that's, you can never have too many catchers in the program, especially talented guys that can legitimately do it. And he's a big kid, he's a physical kid already. I think that there's probably going to be some power to his game as well. But I think the bat is the calling card for him.
And then the next guy that I have is I have him tagged as a first baseman. Obviously, he's a two-way player at the high school level. He's thrown really well this spring for Waxahachie.
Back-to-back no hitters.
Back-to-back no hitters, 17 strikeouts. This dude, he's probably my favorite signee to watch. I mean, he's a dude out there. But Jared Thomas, I'm gonna be sweating this guy on Major League Draft Day because I really want him to make it to campus. But I think he makes an immediate impact somewhere on the team. There's
no doubt. Like Jared's, he's just a baseball player. We took him his sophomore year, and you bet on it. He hadn't grown yet. He wasn't as strong as the other kids. He wasn't as physical, but man, you can just tell that he knows the game. He loves the game. He's a leader. Everything that you look for in a high school player, Jared has. And now what's good and scary at the same time is that the physicality has come. And, as he's gained strength, he's just become more and more athletic, and he's played some center field for Waxahachie. So he can run, he can hit, he can pitch. He's as good defensively as anyone that we've had at first base since Chance Wheelis, probably. I mean, he knows his way around the bag. The footwork's, natural. He can do it in his sleep. And he's just a guy that plays for winning teams, right? He missed, it was probably a good thing for Texas that he missed a good chunk of this year with a bone bruise in his wrist, because, I've seen him twice now. There's scouts there every time he plays or throws or whatever he does on a given day. And, his future is at the plate and in the field, but, I would love to have him as a guy, you could use him like Texas has used Brandon Belt, his first year at Texas. Skip would go to the mound with about 6 gloves and pass them out whenever we'd bring Brandon in to close. You'd have somebody move to first. And so, you could see a scenario where Sean or Coach Pierce, if he goes out to change the pitchers, doing that next year, because he has pitchability. The stuff is not overwhelming, but he throws strikes. He knows how to pitch. He's competitive. And, that might be a way to just get him more involved. But I do think his future's at the plate and in the field, but he's a special kid. You talk about, he's your favorite player to watch. He, for the people who've been around him much at all, he'd be one of your favorites to just be around, just a great clubhouse guy, and, contributes to winning baseball.
Yeah. He's a guy that I really enjoy watching how guys track and take pitches sometimes, because you can tell that some guys just innately have a feel for recognizing stuff and tracking it and have a full confidence in what they're doing in the batter's box. And he's like that. I mean, it's probably my favorite left-handed swing in the class, but he's also my favorite guy just to watch how he tracks the baseball. And I think that comes really naturally to him.
Yeah.
And as we've seen with Texas this year, there's also value in guys that simply come in and throw strikes. So there's always potential of having that with Jared as well. But like Drew said, his future is undoubtedly as a hitter. athletic enough to maybe play the outfield if they need to, but it could be a big time defensive first baseman. He can really, really hit. We were just looking at his stats earlier. As Drew said, he's missed a lot of time this year. But I think he's had like 47 plate appearances. He's only struck out twice, which I think that's true to form for him. Like, he's not a guy that's going to strike out a lot. He's going to put the ball in play. It's a really athletic swing. I think there's a lot of physical projection that's still remaining. He's the type of guy, like Drew was saying, you get a guy like that in your program and he can kind of not change the culture because it's a good culture already, but he can kind of keep that thing going. He's a guy that will set the example for the guys and kind of fall in line and keep carrying that torch and doing it the right way. So he's definitely one of my favorite players in the state. I know we have him rated really, really high in our 5-55. And he certainly lived up to that after a strong summer.
Yeah, sometimes you get those two-way guys that have the ability to do both, but you maybe love hitting more than pitching, but their pitching is, obviously their long-term career. When I talked to him, he said, I'm a hitter. He's like, I do like pitching. Like, it's been really fun at the end of the season, but he's like, I'm a hitter. And I'm like, well, that's good to hear. Because I don't know if anyone's noticed, but actually, Drew, we mentioned your name up in the press box from the first time it happened, but without EK in the lineup, Texas went to a completely right-handed batting lineup, which doesn't happen very often. So they definitely needed some lefties on the campus.
No doubt.
And then, another guy that you got to worry about if you're Texas fans is the shortstop, Cutter Coffee out of California. Another really two-way player, or good two-way player. He's got an elite glove from what I've seen. And I think he's another guy that probably ends up in the infield, but obviously he's been able to pitch for his team out there as well. So.
Yeah, he was a guy that I think people kind of wondered if it would be on the mound in the future, but he's unfortunately for Texas, he's really hit recently. So he's definitely hit his way firmly into the draft mix. Like you said, we don't have our finger completely on the pulse out there in California, but I don't think I'd get my hopes up very much if I'm a Texas fan about this one.
Yeah.
But as I used to always try to hammer home, it's still really important. And look, there's a chance he comes to campus, but if he doesn't, it's still really, really important to go out and get these guys, because you've seen it. Like, Texas has a definite pipeline to California now.
Yeah.
They have a big presence there, and it is always one of the premier areas for high school baseball. Always. San Diego, Los Angeles, even NoCal as well. Like, so that's always a good place to have a presence out there. But yeah, he's really hit. He's been a guy he's got a big arm. I mean, I think he's been up to 94 miles an hour off the mound, but he's really hit. I think he's a position player first now. Shortstop, maybe he outgrows that, maybe not. But yeah, he's a guy that I think is it could be pretty rich come draft time.
Yeah, they Texas has done a really good job of getting in Orange Lutheran. I know they've got a couple of guys that are younger that are committed there, but they've continued to really recruit California well. And he's a guy that I definitely am concerned about, because I did not expect him to hit this well this past year, and he's kind of lit it up. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with him. But another guy that just is a lot of fun to watch, that reminds me of some of the legacy shortstops that have come through Texas, is Jalen Flores out of Brandeis here in the San Antonio area. Talk about an athletic kid that has a lot of room to grow and could just, if he gets on campus, could really explode. But from what I've seen, I think he's also been a guy that's been rising up some draft lists. Maybe y'all can talk to that guy.
Yeah, Dustin's seen him a couple of times, so I'll let him do the majority of the talking on Jalen. But, I remember Jalen came to a camp, I think it was one of Tulo's first weeks on campus. And it's funny because you see this happen a lot in the recruiting process, but a lot of times coaches like to recruit who they were as players, right? And Jalen's a big shortstop, and Tulo likes big shortstops because that's what he was. It'd be tough, for a kid in that position to turn down going to learn from Tulo. Look what he's done with Trey. Trey has always been a baseball player and, just a really good athlete and a yard rat guy who's always around the field. But when he came in, we didn't know what he was going to do. Some people thought he'd play center field. Some people thought he'd pitch, but shortstop really wasn't one of the main destinations that we had Trey penciled in at. And he's turned into an All-American level shortstop. And, a lot of credit goes to him for all the work that he's put in. And it helped having Tula there. So, that's a path that I think Dustin would probably agree with this, but Jalen's a lot more polished as a shortstop than Trey was at that point in his career for sure. So, it's tough not to get excited thinking about the thought of Jalen going and working under Tulo for a couple of years. And I know that that's on the family's mind too. From a draft perspective, he's had a great year. There's a lot of buzz on him. But if you're Texas, you feel pretty comfortable because it's going to take a lot of money to sign him. And that's really all you can ask for, is if these kids are making decisions, every kid and family has a different dollar amount. But luckily for Texas, you can push that money up a lot more often than not, just because of the value of going to Texas and playing for 3 years. And luckily for us, I think the Flores family understands that. But, if he gets to draft day and gets popped, and, you're going to at least be able to feel comfortable knowing that money is right. And it's going to take the kind of money that it makes sense to sign for if he does. But he's going to have a good option to go work with Tulo for a couple of years. I think that'll be hard to turn down. But, Dustin's seen him a couple of times. So let Dustin talk about what he's seen on the field.
Yeah, I saw him a couple of weeks ago in one of his last high school games. And like Drew said, there's a lot of buzz about him right now, from a draft and pro scouting perspective. The class in Texas this year, especially in the South Texas area, there's not many guys you can get, really excited about and dream on and say, hey, I want to go buy this guy away from school. I want to go pay him the 7-figure or whatever the big bonus is to get him into our organization. Jalen's one of those guys. And, like Drew said, when Trey got to Texas, scouts were kind of split. Some thought he'd be a pitcher. Some thought he'd be a position player. Some thought he'd be a position player that maybe wouldn't stick on the dirt. He'd be a guy that played in center field, and he's turned into arguably the best defensive shortstop in the country, who's also hit 14 home runs this year. So it's a great situation for Jalen and his family to be in. As Drew said, I don't think there's a better guy to work with from an infield shortstop perspective than Troy Tulowitzki at Texas. On the flip side, Jalen's played himself into a position where there's probably going to be, some big money, thrown around at him. My favorite thing about him is he's so smooth, he just, nothing ever overwhelms him on the field, whether it's defensively, offensively, everything just kind of comes easy to him. He's what I kind of describe as like a low effort player. And that's not like he's not trying. It's just that the game comes so easy to him that it often looks like he's doing things effortlessly. So he's a guy that I think has average or better future tools across the board. He's run a little better this year. I think he's got more raw power in there than he's tapped into yet. I think he's got pretty good hand-eye coordination, some barrel feel as well. And I think he would stick at shortstop in college. I know some scouts wonder if he'd outgrow it because, Troy Tulowitzki was kind of a unicorn in that he was a big shortstop. We don't typically see many of those guys. Carlos Correa is like the rare exception of a guy that's like 6'4", but is a really good defensive shortstop. Like Xander Bogaerts, for example, is a bigger shortstop. He's not a good defensive shortstop, so there's so many good players there defensively that you don't often see the really tall guys, but I have no doubt he could do it in college. And I think there's a chance that he could stick at the pro level as well, but really well-rounded player. Everything comes easy to him. When we had Sean Allen on the podcast a long time ago, he used one of our favorite phrases is like a top step guy. Like he's on the top step of the dugout. He's into the game. And that's who Jalen Flores is. That's the way he carries himself on the field. So, whatever happens, come draft time or whatever, he's going to have two really good potential decisions to choose from. But if he does get to campus, Texas fans are going to be really, really fired up about that one.
Yeah, he was definitely one of those guys that when you watch him in person, I got to see him once early in the season, but he was one of those guys that was, as you mentioned, top shelf. Like he was he's up there on the top step. He's yelling at his guys. He's getting them fired up and keeping them going. So that's definitely something Texas needs, especially as some of the more vocal guys are going to be moving on.
Yeah. And like we said with Jared too, I mean, there are a lot of guys on this list that are like that. I don't think that's an accident. I think that's something that they really, really value and they really look for in the recruiting process.
Yeah. The next guy we have up is a JUCO guy from Seminole State, Ben Harmon. He's a guy, when I talked to him, he came from a pretty successful football team in high school. So he didn't really focus on baseball until he got to JUCO. He's just one of those kind of yard rat guys. I mean, he knows he's coming in to fight for a spot somewhere on the infield and just be a utility guy. But he's a guy that could potentially come in and, steal some games on Tuesday nights and, work his way into the lineup if he's able to continue developing his hitting and defense. So he's an interesting guy that just from an athletic standpoint, the Texas coaches seem to love to bring in those two-way players. So,
yeah, from what I know of Ben, he was a quarterback. He's very well known in that part of the state. And he is, let's see, I pulled up his numbers. He's had a good year offensively, stolen 11 bases, 8 doubles, 26 RBIs. So, there, like you said, there's some projectability there because he's athletic, and he's a tough, hard-nosed kid. And, you take a chance on guys like that sometimes. And, like you can say there's been some, Jake McKenzie, didn't, that wasn't a guy that we had penciled in for the future. And he just fought his way into the lineup and, didn't let you take him out. And, that's part of what these college coaches are dealing with when they're, when they're having to allocate 11.7, you got to be creative and you got to hope that you're hitting on some guys. We've had walk-ons play quite a bit and contribute quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
In this century and you just never know because, I always like to say that, you take all the high profile guys in a class, there's always going to be one guy that just totally crashes and burns and never lives up to what you think he should do. And there's always going to be one guy in every class that comes out of nowhere to surprise you. And, you just never know who that is. One guy I didn't talk about much was Jaden Duplantier on the infield. He's, you talk about top step guys and looking for certain traits in your players when you're recruiting. Jaden fits that mold, and we were willing to bet on Jaden early because of his brother Dre. We know what the intangibles with Dre are. We know what kind of kid he is. We know what the family's all about. And Jaden was another one that was, when he committed, he was nowhere near a finished product physically or on the field. But you knew that just being at home with big brother Dre, he was going to get plenty of work in. That's just in the Duplantier blood. They have a great work ethic. They're smart kids. They're awesome kids. They have leadership qualities, and Jaden has continued to grow, continue to get stronger and faster, and is put up monster numbers this year. And Dustin's seen him a couple of times, and he has a chance. Everyone assumes that Jalen Flores might be the shortstop, but you can't discount a player like Jaden because he's going to keep getting better. He's turned into an incredible athlete, and that's just kind of the path that we figured that he would take, just knowing the family and betting on that.
Yeah, Jaden is a guy that you get really excited about future infield battles between a possibility of Flores and Duplantier going at it. I think Flores probably has a little bit better bat, but Jaden has a great glove and he has really good instincts from what I've seen in the high school games that he's played. So that's a fun one to look forward to.
Yeah, and going back to Harmon, Drew, what was the stat that Nolan Kane gave us about their LSU teams? Like all of their best LSU teams had really contributing like walk-ons or guys that just didn't plan on to be great players. Like it always happens. And junior college baseball in this region, it's really good competition, but it also breeds a mindset of guys that are just very competitive. Like, look, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance to show up. These guys go there for a year. They get more physically developed. They get so many reps and things like that. So I think it's really smart for any of these programs in this region to take chances on guys like that and get those athletes in the program. But Yeah, I saw Jaden probably about a month ago down at Summer Creek, and I hope Texas fans don't cringe when I say this, but I'm gonna use a Shaka Smartism. Shaka Smart used to always talk about the energy givers and the energy takers, meaning he didn't like those energy takers on his team that kind of just brought the mood down, would take energy away from people, bad body language, that sort of thing. Jaden is an energy giver, man. He's got a great bounce to his step. He's a leader. He's always talking. He's got great body language. He ran, I think, in the 3.8 or 3.9 down the line, which is an improvement. I mean, that's plus, maybe double plus speed you're talking about. And as Drew said, he's gotten so much better since the time that Texas took his commitment. He's a guy that could legitimately stick at shortstop now. He's a guy that's bats improved. His bat speed's improved. So, it's really smart of Texas to bet on Jaden, knowing what Dre was like already in their program. Like Drew said, great family, super bright kid, about all the right things and doing it the right way. And like you said, if both those guys show up, it's not a guarantee, who play. Mitchell Daly, for example, came. Hey, that's a big time shortstop. Well, Trey Flautini was so good, he ended up having to play second base. So you just never know. Just try to get as many of these guys on campus as you possibly can. But it's certainly a great problem to have if you've got too many guys that can play shortstop at a high level, because that is a pivotal position at the college level.
Yeah, and Texas has kind of built this legacy after Hamilton and Flautini, and even the guys before those, that I don't think Texas has seen bad shortstop play in a while, so they've been kind of spoiled. So let's hope it keeps going.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we've kind of hit the infield and the catchers. We'll jump out to the outfield right now. And there's three guys that I have kind of penciled in, one of which is a two-way player as well. But we'll start with the guy that's probably not going to make it to campus. His profile has always been pretty high, and he's done nothing to let that down. Henry Bolt out of Palo Alto, California. Big dude, and he can absolutely mash. I saw he just got invited to the PDP, and he's going to probably hear his name called pretty early in the draft. So,
yeah, we talked about Jeff expanding our video operation. So we've actually been lucky. We've started doing a lot more coverage in California. So we've actually been able to get a little video on Henry, and then also Cutter Coffee as well these past couple of weeks. But yeah, Henry's a monster. The good thing about Henry is, financially they understand, the value of going to Texas, and being from Palo Alto, that they understand the education piece of it too. So, again, it's a situation where you take a chance on a guy like that. And if you get him, great. If you don't, it never hurts to get a pipeline going, because all those kids play for teams. And a lot of times a kid of that caliber is looked up to from an entire organization. And, that gives Texas or whatever team access to a program. Just cherry pick a couple kids here and there over the course of a decade. And, that may end up being a guy that is a major contributor. And with the scholarship situation the way it is currently, with the 11.7, and going out to California makes a lot of sense on so many levels. For one, if you're talking out of state tuition and money, it's expensive to go to Texas and a lot of places, to be honest. I mean, that's from a cost standpoint, that's a private school education. When you're looking at tuition for out of state, and those kids from California are used to going to expensive schools. So the sticker shock, when you put that scholarship offer up next to the cost and, what it takes to be able to afford going to Texas, even on scholarship, isn't as drastic as it might be from a kid from another part of the country. So, there's a whole host of reasons why we've been successful in California. And that's part of it. We've built a nice pipeline out there. The Augie connection is real. Obviously Tulo's name carries a lot of weight in the state. Our success with a bunch of California players over the last 20 plus years is real. And to neglect, going out and cherry picking a couple of guys from that part of the country every year is, wouldn't make a lot of sense. But it's an area we've had success, and we'll see what happens with Henry. I would put those odds probably 50-50 right now on him. But you're positioned to where it's going to take a lot of money and have to be the absolute perfect situation for him to sign. So, and that's as much as you can ask for, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you go out there, if you can get a coin flip type situation, that's a good one. I was kind of, it seems like there's a split on him kind of in the pro community, because he's not on Keith Law's top 100 list, but he's number 33 on Kylie McDaniel's list. So, and I think part of that is because he was kind of not a late bloomer, but a guy that kind of, burst onto the scene. I think he was the one in area code that hit a ball off the building behind the USD field.
He crushed that thing.
Yeah. And so the power has really gotten people's attention. You go look at our Fivetool video. He's a physical kid, man. He's a big dude. So he's got some juice in the back for sure. But, I kind of imagine that there might be a little bit of a split on just, how much can he get to the power, this and that, or whatever. And he's a little older for his draft class. And all those things could potentially play in the Texas favor. It's like, hey, you know what? I'll go to school and bet on myself and show you that I can get to this power and mash and that sort of thing. So, but anytime you can go out and get a talent like that and you approach drafting, and it might be a coin flip type situation, man, that's a great place to be in. Because it's big time power, and it's a guy that can really hit in the middle of your lineup and really add a lot of juice there for years if he does make it to campus.
Yeah, and he's another guy that I was going to talk about it later, but y'all mentioned his size, and it's one of the things I've noticed about this coaching staff is they've started to make that kind of transition over the last probably class and a half to really bring in some of these bigger body guys that can really mash. And Henry's a perfect example of that. He's a big guy but he knows how to use that weight. He doesn't like carry his body size. He doesn't lumber. He moves pretty well. I know in prior years he's had a little swing and miss, so I didn't know if that would be affecting his draft stock at all. But yeah, if Texas could land a guy like that, that definitely makes a huge impact on the hitting side. And then you go back to the state of Texas, talk about another big hitting guy is Max Bailey, I guess is how you pronounce it.
Baloo. I had to learn that one too. Drew had to school me up on that one. It's like the
Jungle Book
Necessities Jungle Book guy. Yeah. So I've been watching that movie a lot at the time with my son. So yeah, I had to learn that one too. Yeah, I was like you. I kept butchering it the first time.
I butchered it every single, like I talked to him. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher your name, man. Like I apologize.
Max. Just stick with Max. Stick to Max. There
Max
is safe.
Yeah. I got to see Max a couple times earlier this spring, and what I can say about him is he's one of those guys that steps in the box and he just looks like he belongs there. Right? Like he's a physical presence. He just looks like a big leaguer standing in the box. And, that's pretty intimidating for a lot of high school pitchers. He's a guy that gets walked a lot just because of his name and his level of success to this point. But, he's a guy that's a big physical athlete that can really hit. He's a lot more athletic than you would think, just looking at his pure size. But Dustin and I got to see him with the Blue Jay scout team this fall, and we had good times on him getting down the line. I mean, like he could play center field if he had to. I think there's probably some guys that would probably be in line in front of him, but I'm not so sure that I know he can do it if he has to. Just keep collecting those big, strong athletes that can hit, because he's not just a big, strong athlete that has power when he hits the ball. He knows how to hit. There's been points where people, have thought that he could end up being the best hitter in this class in the state of Texas. He's definitely in that conversation for me. But he's, like I said, big time talent, big time athlete. He's a guy that you can see hitting double-digit home runs at some point in his career, maybe sooner rather than later. You never know, but he's, just keeps stockpiling those elite athletes. They're big and physical, and good things happen. And Max falls into that category.
Yeah, I remember when I started with Fivetool, you'd heard his name a lot, but he was out with, what was it, Drew, like a shoulder thing or something like that, or
He missed a good chunk of the summer, if not all of it last year for something. Yeah.
yeah, it was something, it wasn't serious, but it just, oh no, it was a rib, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was a rib.
Yeah, I had some sort of rib injury, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I've heard a lot about this guy, and then we show up to the Blue Jay scout team in the fall, and it's like, yeah, okay, I know what everyone's talking about now, because it's like Drew said, it's a presence. It's a good left-handed swing. One of those types of swings that you get it on video, you kind of watch it for a while. Like, yeah, this looks like a guy that can hit. Gap to gap stuff presently with the ability to drive it over the wall from the pool side. That's gonna grow. He's gonna grow into some bombs. And like Drew said, like, we were impressed with his athleticism. He's a corner outfielder, but if you need in a pinch to play center for you, he could do that for you. But kind of just speaks to the way he moves around at that size and the way he gets down the line, the way he plays hard, doesn't give at bats away, gets down the line well. I don't know how much they're going to have to sweat that one. They might have to, but just because he's a guy that you start checking off, okay, the swing looks really good. Okay, we think the power is going to come. Start checking off some of those boxes, and you're describing a guy that's a pretty attractive prospect. But yeah, I mean, between him and Jared Thomas, I mean, you're talking about two of the guys in the conversation as the best left-handed hitters in the state, are both Texas signees.
Yeah, and those are two guys that if Texas is able to get on campus, which, I think they have at least a 50-50 shot on both. I think those are two immediate impacts to not only the lineup, but defensively. You look at Jared Thomas at first base. I had kind of seen Baloo as a guy out in left field potentially, because I know right field is really tricky at Dish Falk, and especially freshmen. It's a tough place to stick someone out there, right, unlike what most people think. Yeah, those are two guys that could make definite impacts just from a hitting standpoint and bringing that left-handed presence to the lineup. So another guy that I've gotten to know really well, who's a lot of fun to watch, he's just a gamer, is Brenner Cox out of Prosper Rock Hill. He's a guy that knows how to play the game. He plays it hard, and he's super athletic, and I think he's still got room to grow and continue, on that upward trend. So
yeah, I've gotten to see Rock Hill play 5 or 6 times this spring, and when you hear the term twitch, like Brenner fits that mold. Like, I mean, he is so twitchy, and if it's a hard thing to explain to people who aren't really familiar with the term or what it looks like. But if you want to see what it looks like, Brenner is the guy to go watch, because everything he does is quick twitch. He's got really good bat speed. He's fast. He's athletic. Last week I saw him playing against Lovejoy, and they hit a ball over his head in center field, and it hit off the wall, and he just picked it up, turned around, and just threw a missile on a line to third base. And, he has as big of an arm as anybody in this class. And, he's a guy that, he's impressive in BP. He hits the ball really hard, and it's a whippy bat. It gets through the zone, and when he connects, it goes. But like that said, that arm is just impossible to deny. He's been one of my white whales up here in the DFW area, because he is a reliever for Rock Hill, and I've seen them lose a couple of times, and I've seen them blow the other team out a couple of times. And so I just keep missing. I can't, like, every time I go to watch him, hopefully pitch, he doesn't get in the game, but man, like, his ball just jumps, and it's tough to it'd be tough to pass up an opportunity of getting him on the mound. I mean, he's a guy that has legitimate two-way potential also. And for some of these guys that are in that two-way boat, they may do one earlier, or may have a chance to do one earlier than the other, just because of the roster. And, we'll see what the roster looks like at this, heading into next year. And that'll dictate a lot for a guy like him or Jared Thomas of what it makes more sense for them to do. But Brenner's a guy that, he's going to have a chance on both sides of the ball, which is rare. But when you see an athletic kid like him, he has a chance to do it. So he's a really exciting prospect, former quarterback. We talk about the intangibles. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the program. And you can never go wrong from a leadership standpoint with guys like that. And Brenner fits that mold. And, he does everything at a high level, like you said, and he's fun to watch.
Yeah, I think if you summed them up with one word, it's be explosive. Like everything he does it's just like explosive actions, explosive arm, explosive bat speed. Like it's, big time athlete. And we'll see. Like Drew said, I hope they give him a chance on the mound just to get him on there and see what it looks like. But you bet on those guys, those multi-sport athletes with the twitch and the athleticism and the tools that he has. Is certainly a guy worth betting on for sure.
Yeah, and I put him as the last outfielder because I think long term he probably ends up at outfield. But he's got an arm on him, and I could definitely see him coming in and Allen going, no, we're just gonna usher you right over here to the mound.
That might be a fight in the coaches meetings.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So I think he can make an immediate impact potentially next year on the mound. But he's a fun guy to watch. And then speaking of which, jumping into the pitching staff, a guy who it's been fun to watch just because of how much he's grown over the past 2 years and kind of his background. You talk about JUCOs playing really tough schedules and being super competitive in Texas. And I think this is a guy that has learned and kind of grown into that at the San Jac Community College. But Chris Stewart, left-handed pitcher who, when I first saw him, he didn't blow me away. And then he just continues to get stronger and better feel of his breaking stuff. And so, at this point, I almost, depending on what happens, of course, I could see him easily slotting in as a Sunday guy next season for Texas.
Yeah, I saw him at the DBU the JUCO All-Star event that they have every fall. And like you said, it's really cool stories from the Netherlands, which it just shows you the power of JUCO baseball in Texas. Like, I think that was up there, and there's a guy from the Netherlands, there's a guy from the Dominican Republic, there was a guy from Japan that played for one of the New Mexico teams. It turned into a destination for international guys that just want to get their foot in the door, potentially play college baseball. But he punched out. I only saw him for an inning, but he punched out all three guys. Fastball up to 94. Looked like it was a tougher look for hitters. Slider in the low 80s. I think the most important part is it looked like these guys are going to be able to throw strikes. It's a pretty repeatable, simple delivery. And like you said, I think that you look at the way the delivery works and stuff, it looks like he's probably going to be able to hold that. But I think worst case scenario, that's a guy that you can slot into your bullpen right away as a guy that can be a left-handed option. And perhaps best case scenario, he's a guy you get on. They're not the same pitcher, but kind of similar to what Lucas Gordon was like early in his career, pitched out of the bullpen. If you need him for a start, he could do it. If you need out of the pen, he could do it. So depending on what that roster looks like next year might determine what kind of role he has. But I think he's going to throw strikes, and I think the fastball and slider combo it can get a lot of outs at the college level.
Yeah, I pulled up their stats, and right now he's sitting at 72 and a third innings with 97 strikeouts, 35 walks, and a 2.36 ERA with a 10-2 record. He's one of the main starters on arguably one of the best JUCO programs in America. And you stockpile those guys with stuff, guys that can pitch and figure out where they fit. This past weekend was a good example of it, but I think, they're willing to toy with rotations and how they use certain guys. And, you may start looking at some guys being openers or in him being a mid-relief guy if he's not the starter. There's all kinds of combinations to make this thing work now. And it's interesting to see Texas start to kind of toy with some of that stuff because, that can be what ignites the fire in the pitching staff. We used to see it all the time with Missouri. It was really annoying to play against, but they would always have like a future first rounder on Friday night that was a junior, the sophomore who was that next future first rounder on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they'd throw like 9 different guys. And there's all different kinds of ways to do it. And ultimately all that matters is that it works. So, like we'll see with some of these guys, just take them, stockpile guys with stuff, and some pitchability in there as well, and see where it plays out. But yeah, I mean, like Dustin mentioned, you could see him being a guy that pitches early, whether it is that Sunday slot, or, maybe he's that valuable middle relief guy that, he's too good to only let pitch once in a week. I think that's kind of what we're trying with Tristan. It hasn't been probably the year that he's wanted on paper. But Tristan's such a team first guy that he goes in and says, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to help. And, with a guy that you trust to throw strikes, getting him in more often than not, it might be the best route for him as opposed to just being used once.
Yeah. The majors continue to go to these starters that are only expected to go a couple innings, and they just throw a bunch of arms. Old Dilly Peters.
Yeah. That's how the Pirates are using him. Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's going from a reliever role to a starter, and he's unhittable practically. It's been really fun to watch. So it's interesting to see, as you said, Drew, how that kind of translates and shifts down to the college game as things flow through. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Stewart can do, because I've seen him hit 95, 96 recently. And they've continued to play against some high competition. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues to develop under Allen.
Yeah.
And then he's also a lefty, which helps, talking
about that, like it is interesting because, I know there's some teams in the Big 12 that like Oklahoma State's one, typically they really struggle with left-handed pitching. If you just look at the splits. Now, obviously that didn't necessarily play out in our series against them, but you see it a lot. Like left-handers are not comfortable at bats for a lot of college hitters. And the more you have, the more options you have. And that's been one of the things that Coach Allen's done such a good job with over the last few years. When Coach Pierce was first hired, the goal was, we just need guys. We just need players with ability, and we'll kind of figure it out from there. But what you've seen as we've gone on is, you've started recruiting a team, right? And so you're recruiting to roles as much as you are just straight talent. Now you want to accumulate all the talent you can get, but sometimes when you see some of the guys that get recruited and then sign or commit, sometimes if you look at numbers, you may be like, well, what, that doesn't seem like a guy that we would sign. Well, now we've been in a spot where you can be a little bit pickier and say, hey, we need a left-handed specialist. So let's go get a guy that's a left-handed specialist, and not everyone is being recruited to have the same role at this point. Now you have to recruit backup catchers and stuff like that. And that's been one of the areas that we've been able to take advantage of in the portal. And why I think we'll continue to be a player in the portal, just because it helps fill holes with some experienced guys, which matters. A guy like Antico, he fits that mold. I mean, it's rare to get a guy like that of that caliber, but it's starting to be a lot more of the norm. So you're starting to see, I think, you're going to see in the future a lot smaller classes leaving some spots for the portal. And that's an area that you can do a lot of damage in and get some immediate impact guys. So that'll be something to watch too, around the draft and whenever that part of the recruiting season picks up this year.
Yeah, that's a great point. The next guy we have on our list is another left-handed pitcher, Colin Ballantyne out of Highland Park. I honestly haven't been able to get a ton of views on him. But what have y'all been able to see from him up in the Dallas?
So I got to see Highland Park last week. I didn't see the game Colin pitch, but he's been in and out. He's had some tendonitis issues, I think, at this point of the year. But he's a tall lefty that knows how to pitch. Velo's not, doesn't blow you away right now, but he's made significant jumps in the past year. He's been on some velocity programs and has done well with that. And he's a guy that, it's always interesting with a lot of the high profile lefties in high school, because a lot of the the caliber of kids that we sign a lot of time as a left-handed pitcher, they get drafted, right? And us taking a guy like that early just gets eyeballs on him and more interest in him from an earlier age. And those guys a lot of times end up signing. Like a guy like Kyle Muller fits that mold, right? But Colin is that guy that you see and you're like, man, like the stuff's not there right now, but like if he continues to grow and put on a weight, we know he knows how to pitch. If that velocity jump comes, I mean, you may be stealing a guy that's a big time contributor down the road. And talking about roles, like he's a guy that could come in and be a lefty specialist off the bat. And then maybe by sophomore, junior year, you know, be in the mix for a rotation spot, depending upon what the roster looks like then. But, you know, he's a guy that's really intriguing, knows how to pitch. The stuff is coming. The body is right. And you just can, you know, he gets in the weight room with Coach Couch and, you know, he may look like a completely different guy in 2 years. Right. And so he's a guy that's definitely intriguing. Had some success when he was healthy this spring, comes from a good program at Highland Park, and you definitely take chances on a guy like that.
Yeah. Like Drew said, physically, I think that he hasn't hit that final growth period. But he's a tall guy right now. So you kind of project looking ahead what that could look like, whether it's a year or 2 years in the college strength program, and then his body really hits that final, you know, not the final, but that big maturation jump that a lot of guys often hit, you know, before their senior year, sometimes in high school. But really, you're betting on a guy that can pitch, he can spin it. There's a chance he could throw 3, maybe 4 pitches for a strike, knows how to get out. And we know how valuable those guys are at the college level. A guy you can look to, you go down the list of your bullpen who's available that day. It's like, okay, Valentine, we know he's going to throw strikes. We know he's going to get in there. We know he's going to compete. We know he knows how to pitch. Like there's a lot of value of having those guys in the staff. And then, by the way, maybe his physical jump takes his stuff to a place that really makes him an even bigger contributor. But yeah, it's a smart bet to bet on those guys from the left side that know how to pitch and know how to spin the baseball.
Yeah, the guy that he reminded me the most of the limited times I did see him was Luke Harrison, the freshman this year. He just throws strikes. I mean, he doesn't have the highest stuff, but he's got a good break on his ball, and he can throw it over the plate. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues to develop. Another local kid here in Syntax is Lake Travis High School's Pierce George. You know, physically the guy is huge. You know, I know he's had some injury issues though this year, which has really hampered his development. He's played shortstop at times for them, but he's also pitched. I've seen some of his pitching, maybe some repeatability issues just due to his size. You know, it's hard to get going downhill when you're 6'7", 6'8". So a guy that, you know, we'll have to see what ends up with being with him, but you know, they took a chance on him. So
yeah, he's big, super physical guy that throws hard. Like you said, unfortunately, he had some injury issues. I think he finally got back on the mound like a couple weeks ago. But I've seen Lake Travis a bunch and haven't seen him throw yet. So, you know, kind of see what ultimately happens with him. But definitely a guy, you look at him in the uniform. He grabs your attention for sure because he looks like he should be on Sark's defensive line with how big he is. But yeah, we'll see how he comes back and how much control and stuff is in there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's a lazy take, but he's an area code guy. So you have to know that there's at least some amount of pro interest there to, you know, to take a chance. I mean, like just keep, like you say, collect good talent, collect guys that are big and physical, and see where it goes. I mean, you know, especially when they're local kids like that, from a good program. I mean, it's one of those ones where it has a chance to really work out. And, you know, like I said, he's been hurt, so it's tough for us to know if he's made that jump yet, but there's definitely something there to dream on for sure.
Yeah. And then moving on to Martin High School, they got the hard throwing righty, Max Grubbs. I've seen his fastballs has been up there. It seems like he's gotten some good command on his slider. So what, have y'all had a chance to see him at all?
I've seen him this year. You know, Max has good stuff, like you mentioned, but he knows how to pitch too. So he's a guy that, you know, could be relied upon early, I think, just because he throws strikes. He's athletic. I say he's athletic. He plays shortstop some for Arlington Martin. And I know him and I have had this conversation, so I know that he's okay with this, but he's not a shortstop, but he is athletic enough to play it.
He's not going to be trying to go take some ground balls when he gets to Texas. He's going to go
Yeah.
straight out to the bullpen for sure. He knows who he is.
Yeah, I went over to their game a couple weeks ago, and he was playing short. They had it was funny because they were playing a Saturday game, and I was lucky that he got up early and responded to my text, because I always try to check with the guys and make sure that the game's still on, time is right, the venue's right. And they moved their game from noon on Saturday to 10 a.m. at the other field. So luckily he responded to me and kept me from wasting a drive across town that would have been 2 hours late for at the wrong field. But yeah, but they moved it up. I asked him, why did y'all move it? He said, well, we have prom tonight and the moms wanted the game moved. So I guess they ended up moving it. And
you're not winning that battle. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Just let them have it. But yeah, he played short that game. Had a couple misplayed balls, and he texted me right after the game. He goes, well, that's why I'm not a shortstop, or, something like along those lines. But I've seen him pitch. He's a strikeout guy. He has swing and miss stuff. Knows how to pitch, competes. He's a guy, he's a guy with his kind of stuff. You could see him being a back of the bullpen guy early, just because of the swing and miss slider. But yeah, he's an intriguing arm, and he's a guy that kind of hit the scene late and had a really big junior summer, and Sean jumped on him, and it was good for Texas and good for him. So he's got a big series this week. I'm trying to remember who Arlington Martin plays, but they play somebody really good. That's an intriguing matchup that's on the list for me to potentially see Saturday. I won't get to see him throw, but I've seen him, and he's good, and it's exciting get for the Longhorns.
Yeah, the stuff really flashes, especially the breaking stuff. I mean, it's swing and miss stuff potentially. And there's some strike throwing in there as well. He's another guy that I think get him into a college strength program and things like that, you're going to see that velocity tick up. And a lot of that happens naturally as well, but I think that there's some room for growth there. But it was an aggressive and smart move by Texas to jump on him, because he was a guy in the summer where it really started ticking up, and they jumped on it quick.
They play Prosper. That's right.
Oh, that'll be a test.
Yeah. So that him versus Colin versus Lucas Davenport. So that'll be Texas versus A&M. Should be tonight. Yeah.
He's a guy that, you look at the mentality side of the ball, you can tell that he has it. It's just about putting the pieces together, because he's going to be a competitor, and he could definitely be a guy that comes in on the back end to help out.
Right.
Headed back out to the West Coast, Matthew Porches out of Ladera Ranch. He's another tall, bigger guy. I think he's got some intriguing stuff, but I don't know that he's quite made the jump yet, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes from there. From
a prospect standpoint, he was a guy that was on the scene really early. He'd had a past of playing with Team USA, was kind of known as, the guy on the West Coast for that age group. I mean, he's been ranked really highly. Like you said, these kids all go through these phases where they grow at different times. And, some of these kids, they grow too fast and their body doesn't catch up, and they have trouble repeating. And I think Matt falls into that category. But, like you said, he was the number one player in the class at one time. And that California pipeline is worth paying attention to, for sure.
Yeah. And then we go back to Texas, and we go back to JUCO.
those early Cali ads always have a chance.
Yeah, for sure. Right-handed pitcher John Wyatt Cheney out of McLennan Community College. He was a one-time Okie State commit, or I guess he actually made it to campus his freshman year and then transferred to McLennan. I think he's a guy that McLennan's really helped him continue to develop. He's a guy that's continued to add a little velocity. He's added much better command on his breaking stuff and his off speed. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do in the back end for the bullpen side of Texas.
Yeah, he was the co-pitcher of the year in their conference this year.
Yeah.
I think he's consistent. I talked to Skip Johnson's son is at McLennan now, Tyler Johnson, and talked to him a little bit, and things to say about him. He's a leader on the field. What you're going to get with him. He's consistent. The velo can tick up at times he's been up to 93, 94 some this spring. But just, he's another one of those guys that, he's had that taste of D1 baseball, so he knows what it's about. But then he goes and refines his game and develops more at a place like McLennan, and they just keep pumping out good prospects left and right. And, as a program that won the national championship last year, it's tough to shy away from a guy that is a program leader and the conference co-pitcher of the year.
Yeah, he's Texas got a really good look at him because he absolutely shoved for about 3 innings when they scrimmaged in the fall, and then I think he was a Texas commitment 2 weeks later. So they obviously liked what they saw in that matchup, but the fastball velocity keeps ticking up. Slider's got a chance. I know it racked up some swings and misses against that Longhorn lineup, but anytime you go to McLennan, you're going to get fantastic teaching, development, and then if you perform there, that's usually a pretty good sign that you're going to have a real chance at the next level. So Texas got a good look at him and made the move, and they look smart for doing so.
Yeah, when I talked to John Wyatt, I joked to him, I was like, so how fast did your phone ring after that scrimmage?
Yeah.
He goes, oh yeah, like the next day Allen was on the phone. So, yeah, they wasted no time in grabbing him. And it says a lot because Okie State saw something coming out of high school of him, and I think he's got potentially a really bright future. And then our final guy on the list is the most recent commitment out of Sanjak, DJ Burke. He's a guy that I've seen hit 94, 95 with fastball. He's got a decent curveball. He said he's been working on his slider quite a bit this season, but he's kind of been one of their main arms to come out of the bullpen I think they're heading to Super Regional today, I believe, Thursday. So, or Friday, maybe it is, but. Yeah,
he's a guy that has more strikeouts than innings, a low walk count, and a low ERA. So
take a chance.
Big arm. He's been really good. Like you said, he's come on as the season's progressed, and he's just a quality option, probably a back of the bullpen guy, which you can never have enough of those. You take them and see how they fit, and hope that they continue to develop and carve out a role.
Yeah, and you talked about McLennan having Tyler Johnson as their skip. I mean, he's going to be going big places. And then Sanjak, I saw the other day, I think they have 19 now, possibly 20 D1 commits from this roster. I mean, that's crazy.
It really is. Like, we talk about this on our podcast a lot, but the level of junior college baseball in Texas is crazy. And, that's one of the good, it's a byproduct of the COVID roster logjam. Is that it's pushed more and more good talent to junior college. And in my experience, the junior college stuff has gone in waves at times throughout, my experience with it. But it's at the height of what it's been over the past 20 years right now. It lost a little bit of luster when the draft and follow rule went away. It came, to some people, it was a little bit less enticing of an option, but I think it's come back to the forefront now. And it's a great option for guys that need to play and need to get reps. Especially, the last couple of years, kids have had all different levels of experience of being able to play games with COVID. Some kids got a lot of time in the summer, that first summer that after COVID hit, some didn't. And then, that just depending upon where they are in the development spectrum, that can really matter. And, you're never going to go wrong by going to a place like Sanjak or McLennan that has great coaching, good facilities, you play a good schedule, and just their reputation, they're always going to have eyes on them. Mm-hmm. And those guys at those programs do such a good job. There's so many of them in Texas. And like we said, with the portal, that's taken some focus away from the earlier and earlier recruiting that we saw 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And so it leads to guys not being seen as often, or, maybe not in the right events at the right time. But some of those colleges spend that first couple of weeks of the recruiting period just going to see guys in the portal playing in summer leagues. And that's really strengthened the level of JUCO baseball in Texas. And like you said, I mean, Tyler Johnson is going to be a star. Like, I mean, he reminds you so much of his dad. I'd probably say he's a little bit more organized than his dad ever was. But the kid grew up driving across Texas to go watch kids play. So he knows what to look for. He's got an ace up his sleeve being an expert in the catching department. Not a lot of programs have good catching instruction. So, and Tyler, he just loves baseball. He's a baseball rat. He married a girl that understands that he's a baseball rat, which is huge. That matters.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, we've said multiple times that a lot of the D1 coaches don't get a chance to get out and see guys in the spring. It's a little bit different for the JUCO guys because they play on Mondays a lot of the time. And I mean, I run into Tyler everywhere. Tyler knows everybody, has seen everybody, and he's just a great he's a baseball encyclopedia, and he's going to be a big time recruiting guy sooner rather than later at some point. But yeah, so I mean, I know Dustin would echo a lot of the same sentiments on Tyler.
I saw him at one of the last games I was at. So yeah, it's he's definitely out there grinding. And I was joking with them when they played Texas. I was like, they were like 3 deep with good catchers. I was like, man, you sure do know how to get those catchers in the program for sure. But yeah, anytime. I mean, if you throw meaningful innings from a McLennan or a Sanjak, like you're gonna have stuff. You're probably going to have velocity. You're probably going to have a chance to step into a program right away and make an impact. And that goes for position players too. The level of baseball for those programs and around this region for JUCO stuff is really, really good. And a lot of big physical guys as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Well, gents, I know I've kept y'all long. I know we've gone through the entire signee class, but I really do appreciate y'all coming on today and talking through the signees and what Texas fans might be able to look forward and, continue to look at as we get closer and closer to the draft and into the dog days of summer. So if there's anything else y'all want to add, please do so. But otherwise I'll let y'all get out of here and get on with y'all's fun. So
yeah, no, we're excited to see how this season finishes. We've obviously been really good at the plate consistently. Moving stuff around in the bullpen. Hopefully something clicks. And, I mean, it all depends on matchups and how you're playing when you get to the postseason. So, we won the national championship in 2005 and we weren't a top 8 seed and finished 3rd in the conference in the season. So, you just never know. All that matters is playing well at the right time when you get to the postseason, and matchups matter. And, the way we hit the ball, if we end up getting sent on the road somewhere, you go to a smaller park or a place that the ball flies and maybe hit your way to a regional win. So you just never know. But, I know that the guys are sticking together and continue to think that they belong in Omaha. And, that's a big part of it. A lot of times teams that know that, guys that have had experience in the postseason, that'll carry it when it comes postseason time. So, that's what'll be exciting about this next couple months, and hopefully we go on a run and end up where we belong. So,
yeah. And I'll say too, this week when they're off, it felt like every single year, when they had this schedule to where they'd have the week off and for May or whatever, the pitching staff in particular would come back better. I remember with that 2018 team, it was like guys got a chance to catch their breath. Sugart and Kingham got some just time off from the mound, and they got a chance to get into the like fans don't realize that when you're in the grind during a week, it's not like you can take a couple of days and say, hey man, let's pour over some video and tweak your mechanics in the bullpen. It's like, it's not really like that. So this little break affords them a great opportunity to catch their breath, get a breather, dive in on some things, maybe tweak a grip, maybe tweak some mechanics or whatever it is. And they usually come out and play better coming out of this bye week late in the season. So, and like Drew said, like you get in the postseason, if you have that experience, it typically shows. There's sometimes teams get in there and they might be a host or highly ranked or whatever, and they just don't have that experience and they just crater. The pressure just really, really gets to them. So that's something that Texas is going to be able to hang their hat on is, They have a bunch of guys that have been through that war before at the highest level and had success doing it. But if that pitching staff can turn the corner a little bit, get some more strike throwing out of the bullpen, Gordon keeps doing his thing, Hanson keeps performing well, I think they've got an opportunity, because like Drew said, the hitting is there. And I think the leadership element and the experience element are there as well.
Well, I mean, I don't think you'll find anybody that's part of the program right now that'll tell you that it's been as desired or looked pretty or anything along those lines. But, from a perspective standpoint, taking we are 0.01 in ERA out of the lead for having the best ERA in the conference. And at the same time, like if you went and put those numbers in the SEC, we'd be, I think, third in ERA for the entire SEC. So, we're spoiled because, it feels probably worse than it is coming after a year where we led the nation in ERA last year. There's been some bad outings, and that just happens. And, I don't think that I'm sure a lot of people do, but I'm sure a lot of people don't understand how much not only just the loss of Tanner hurt, but the timing of when Tanner got hurt.
Yeah.
Just because, you just look at the way that the schedule fell for about the next 3 weeks, and you went into, you lose him right before game 3 at Minute Maid. So Lucas has to push his stuff up to start against UCLA, who's good. And then you have a tough, emotional midweek series with Texas State. And the double midweeks are always tough. And then you go on the road to a good South Carolina team. You stay on the road for a midweek series in South Carolina against the Citadel and the Citadel, and who else do we play? It's right behind you.
Charleston?
It's right behind you on your screen.
Yeah, right.
But and they just didn't have a chance to really reset and recover. And it sounds small, but when you have a normal weekend, with what we thought we had coming in, you're looking at only having to try to fill, maybe 6 to 8 innings out of the bullpen for an entire weekend. And now you lose an ace level starter in Tanner Witt, and then you're having to fill a lot more innings from guys that maybe weren't accustomed to that role yet coming out of the pen, because almost everybody that comes to Texas has been a starter their whole life. So moving to the pen is an adjustment, and making adjustments at this level and at Texas specifically isn't always easy. And like Dustin mentioned, this week for finals, you get a chance to reset, re-energize, and from here on out, you don't have to worry about school. Mm-hmm. So it's just a load of stress and a time for your body to recover. And, we've seen teams, like Dustin said, just totally pick up and take off from here. So that's what we need to hope happens over the next couple of weeks. But it's always worse. It's never as bad as it seems from the outside. I've lived that, and, but the key thing is the guys in the locker room believe still. And that's really all that matters, regardless of what us as fans see and like and want. We want to run rule everyone and shut everybody out every game. And anything less than that feels like a disappointment. And that's what those kids live with. And it's part of why you come to Texas, but at times it can beat you down. And so this week is always such a good time for them to get a chance to reset and reload and get back to the basics and hopefully go on a run here.
Yeah, it was funny because I was joking with Pierce the other night. I said, "How badly do you wish finals week was about 3 weeks ago?" And he just laughed. And he was like, "Yeah, because he says echoed the same sentiments. The ability for these guys to have a chance to take a breath, mm-hmm. sit back, and just kind of be away from baseball completely. And then once they do get back into it, he echoed the same sentiments. You're in baseball. There is no class. You're together 24/7 at that point, and you have one goal. So it'll be fun to see what they can potentially do. And You know, maybe they get lucky, they get hot at the right time, they get to the right regional and they just explode. So, and then you mentioned the expectations. The funny thing was when everyone was melting down about the bullpen and Texas pitching, for vast majority of the season, Texas was top 5 in shutouts. They had 6 on the season and no one else was shutting anyone else out. It was just, they couldn't stop having a reliever come in and give up that early home run. So
yeah,
we'll
I mean, every team is different, you know, and every team has a different makeup from year to year, even if it's a good chunk of the same guys. You know, it takes time to refill leadership at times. You know, replacing the leadership of Ty Madden is just as tough as replacing what he can do for you on the mound. And sometimes that just takes time to adjust and guys to settle into roles. And, you know, you've seen some guys take some roles and run with them. And, you know, you just got to keep building on it. And all that matters once you get to, I mean, everyone starts 0-0 once you get to the postseason. And it's its own season, and you just got to hit that stride and be playing right at the right time. And, you know, I mean, I've been on teams that were the number 1 seed going into the whole tournament and don't get out of a regional, and been a part of a team that, you know, wasn't a top 8 seed that won the national championship. So you just never know. It's about timing. And, you know, as long as those guys stick together and believe in themselves and believe in their teammates, which, you know, everyone seems to think they do. And that's the sense that I've gotten from them. You know, that's what matters over this next month. So it'll be fun to watch.
Well, cool. Well, gents, again, thank you all for coming on and talking some Texas baseball today. Best of luck on everything with the rest of the postseason for high school. And as y'all get into the summer camps, I still don't understand how y'all are able to juggle the high school schedule with, you know, the moms changing dates due to proms and just in general, the lack of information. That boggles my mind.
That's what we spend the most of our time on, is being weatherman / schedule organizer. Like, are you pitching? And like the playoffs this week is like a day ago, a bunch of playoff schedules just changed. And I was like, oh, okay, great. You know, like, so yeah, we spend a lot of time on that, but we figure it out. We're getting the hang of it.
Well, thank you all again. And hopefully we get to try to chat again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, y'all.
We'll see you.